Let me start with my first slide, taken over Australia in 2019. Climate change, biodiversity loss and pollution are three catastrophic changes threatening to overwhelm our planet. Anyone who has witnessed the ruined lives, the misery, the destitution, and the massive economic damage that climate change-driven events alone can create will know we have to change. For climate change, the CERN report in 2007 laid out the stark economic reality on why we needed to take action. Yet 16 years later, carbon levels in our atmosphere are still rising. The international agreements we have put in place to drive change need greater support if they're going to deliver. I believe that they have a democratic and economic deficit at their heart that hinders our progress. That it is not our ambition that is failing, but our execution of that ambition. I believe citizen science is the new tool in our armory that can change this dynamic. That is why in 2013, I believe the EU Environment Minister, Janez Potočnik, and Professor Jacqueline McGlade, the Chief Scientist at UNEP, spent so much time nurturing the formation of the European Citizen Science Association. They saw the democratic opportunity that citizen science presented, that with the use of new technology it is possible to turn 10 to 15% of the European population, some 70 million people, into guardians of the environment. Is this a pipe dream? Is it real? Well, let me ask you here, would you all like to put your hands up if you have a mobile phone? Can we see across the room? Has anybody not got a mobile phone? Well, that means that using the internet developed here in CERN and AI systems, it is possible for you all to be potential citizen scientists, for you to collect real-time data, have it validated, and return to you as information that you can use to mitigate risks in your daily lives. And note the circle that I'm talking about here. You are not just data providers, you are taking information back and being able to use it. Regulators are beginning to understand that if you fill the current democratic deficit and engage with citizens in this way, we can implement our environmental laws at a much faster pace. Air quality is a case in point, demonstrated by a citizen science project in Belgium. Imagine that you are the scientist running this program to expand air quality monitoring, and you are absolutely overwhelmed with 50,000 people who offer to support you. They give you the potential to have the greatest density of air quality monitoring sites of any city in Europe. They also offer to support some of the costs in doing the survey. It's seen as that important. But they demand data and information back in return for their data that they give you, so that they can mitigate and avoid air pollution problems that this particular survey identified and that the city was not aware of. They then start a debate on what needs to be done to improve that air quality, and in turn start to change their own personal behaviors as they recognize that they are part of the problem. And in fact, they actually resulted in political change in the city of Antwerp. Imagine if we did this across the globe and tackled a problem that kills more people per year than COVID-19. How powerful it would be, and how it would support our international agreements on air quality. The EU now understands this. We are seeing an EU policy shift, as shown in this slide, on how citizen science can be integrated into the EU policy development processes. As a result, we already have our first piece of legislation based on citizen science data, the Single-Use Plastics Directive, and more examples will surely follow. Now let me turn to the international policy-making processes. Are we seeing a similar change? And the answer is yes, because the citizen science community has given a glimpse of what can be achieved by practical projects in both the global north and the global south. The first example I will give you tackled mosquito monitoring in Europe. So species such as the tiger mosquito, capable of carrying viruses such as dengue, chikungunya and Zika, are migrating into Europe. Citizen science programs have demonstrated that data sets on the changing distribution of these species can be obtained faster, cheaper, at a greater granularity, and as accurately as conventional monitoring approaches. In the Netherlands, some of this data even became part of the nightly news bulletin, advising people on how to avoid the greatest concentration of mosquito bites, and in effect discouraging travel to areas with high density of mosquitoes. People were using the information to manage health risks. Countries in the global south saw the potential of such programs in tracking other mosquito-borne diseases and supporting health programs. UNEP could see the value of this work and encourage citizen scientists to explore how such programs could be developed to support and develop the implementation of global policy. Leading much of this work has been a loose network of the global citizen science community, prepared to engage with the global policy processes and explore how the democratic deficit in international policies could be tackled. UNEP encouraged this loose association to set up a new NGO to bring focus to this work, with additional support from IASA, the Citizen Science Centre in Zurich, and with the support of the universities of Geneva and Baku. So the global citizen science community has been formed, and we have the opportunity to argue to fill the democratic deficit in international agreements. Support has started to emerge. In 2017, the ministerial statement at UNEA 3, this is the global body that puts in place international agreements to tackle environmental issues, first referenced citizen science. And by 2022, the first multilateral agreement, the first international agreement to include citizen science, was signed in December 2022. International frameworks to support citizen science are emerging. The UNESCO Open Science Recommendation of 2021 and changes to the Aarhus Convention in the same year recognize the right of citizens to gather as well as have access to environmental data. And we have support to integrate citizen science into the methodologies for monitoring the SDGs, and offers of support to integrate citizen science data into the UNEP World Environment Situation Room, a global source of data for the SDGs. Do we have some case examples, though, where we can show that citizen science projects can be applicable into global programs? I believe we do. Let me give you a first example that tackles a democratic deficit. During the COVID pandemic in the UK, as in many countries, real-time data on the disease was lacking. A citizen science health program was set up to fill the void and track the disease and its symptoms by King's College London and a start-up company, Zoe. Can you imagine how they felt when the project attracted 1.5 million citizens to take part in its first week? They challenged government data. They attracted funding from citizens because they couldn't raise funding from the government, and they crowdsourced £2 million from the citizen participants. Over 4.5 million people took part in this program that ought, in my opinion, to be in our global emergency plans for future pandemics. The second is a program in which I'm involved, funded by the EU to empower citizens to understand and deal with climate change. It tackles in particular economic issues, empowering citizens to develop and own community energy facilities and to reduce their carbon footprint. It provides them with a personal trainer and what they need to do to stop being fossil fuel fools, the triple F. It is a project that has the potential for global application across our major cities and goes to the heart of tackling the 30% of all carbon emissions that we are all responsible for. Without tackling this area, we cannot deliver on our ambitions to tackle climate change. The third you've heard a lot about at this meeting. It goes further and tackles democratic and economic challenges citizen science faces in the global south. Project YOMA, Learning to Earning, has built on the technology and methodology of the Crowd4SDG project with funding from the Botnar Foundation, and is working, thanks to the Citizen Science Global Partners, with CITSI Africa to help young citizen scientists in this audience, involving 3,000 young people in local citizen science challenges, helping local authorities to improve services, and rewarding participants with tokens redeemable for educational opportunities. Such programs have the potential to be expanded across the global south. That brings me to my last two slides, which start to explore the challenges and opportunities for citizen science in support of international agreements. Let me just highlight three areas off this slide. Many governments and government departments, as well as academia, and you've heard this already this morning, just do not trust citizen science data. Governments in particular are fearful of lack of control on data and information flow, and often do not have the skills to make citizen science programs work. Funding remains a real challenge, not only for the limited research projects over 3 to 4 years, but for the long-term monitoring programs incorporated into the basic responsibility of statutory organizations. Funding for global programs do not yet exist and will only be found if we integrate citizen science into international agreements and in the way they are implemented. Lastly, as we heard yesterday, citizen science programs remain highly fragmented and lack consistent methodologies that can be shared and developed through global frameworks. We've made a limited start for citizen science as part of the SDGs, but much more work is needed. But we can mitigate these risks by developing and adopting what I believe we need, which is a global convention on citizen science that builds on the work of the Aarhus Convention and the UNESCO Open Science recommendations. It can then be used to underpin including citizen science into all major international agreements. And let me again just focus on three of the critical areas: global rights and protections for citizens to collect and gather data on the environment. We still have too many examples where citizens are prevented from collecting environmental data, not just in the global south, but also in the global north, using legal, financial, and regulatory means. Continental and global citizen science methodologies and tools need to be developed and shared for key critical science programs, tackling the three great challenges I talked about at the beginning of this presentation. Developing sound systems to deal with intellectual property rights as the value of citizen science becomes increasingly clear and the desire for open science and open systems continues to grow. We must not allow citizen scientists to be exploited for commercial gain. Obligations on all the parties to all conventions to integrate citizen science data into national statistical data sets. It is not acceptable to say no. It is not enough to put citizen science as an obligation into international agreements. We have to go further and guide member states in the development of a framework for citizen science to fund and support programs across member states. We also need to recognize that new skill sets are going to be needed to achieve success. We have a unique opportunity to empower millions of people to collect data and information on a scale and density we have failed to achieve through normal scientific research. And if I might leave you with a couple of thoughts, we can build a partnership with citizens to protect the only habitable planet in our solar system. And that shot is taken from 6.4 billion kilometers away from Earth. And the little white spot on the planet is the Earth. So I believe that we need all to volunteer to support the work of the Citizen Science Global Partnership and make the next decade the decade of citizen science, the decade that is with us today. Thank you very much.